Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. This session focuses on language change and maintenance. I hope and expect by the end of this session you would be able to understand the processes of language change and maintenance with the help of some examples. Well, my dear students, time changes all things. There is no reason why then language should have an escape and language should not change. Well, when it comes to the question, what is linguistic change, in order to understand what it is and how does it happen, let us share 3 examples. These are all the recipes that I have taken from 3 different periods of time. I have taken these from Middle English period, early modern English period, and the current English times, today's times. So these 3 recipes I would share, and as soon as you would look at these 3 recipes and the language, the vocabulary choices, the writing style, and the structures, you would be able to realize how languages change and how English has changed over the times. So the first and the second example that I'm going to share are from the British Library's website, Books for Cooks. I have given a link here as well. The third example that I'm going to share is mozzarella and grilled chili salad. That is from Oliver 2000, from where I have taken that. So this is the first recipe. This is from Middle English period. If you focus now on the screen, you can see certain characteristics of this language. It is very difficult to read. Try to read. Take coupons. Is it cups? And shake them. Is it shake them? Take them up. Take almonds blanched. Ground them. It's difficult to read. Some parts are easy. For example, from here, with the same broth. This part we can understand. Cast the milk in a pot, we can understand, though the spellings of milk you can see are different. So, what is this word? We don't know. What is this word? We cannot understand. So, it almost seems to be an alien language. Here I am translating this for you. It's the same recipe. This is the second recipe that is now given here in early modern English. Take a pint and somewhat more of thick cream, 10 eggs, put the whites of 3, beat them very well with 2 spoonfuls of rose water, mingle with your cream 3 spoonfuls of fine flour, mingle it so well. So, it's readable. Early modern English is very easily readable. Probably one of the areas one of the word choice you might find kind of distinctive or different, that is this repetitive use of mingle. So, the recipe continues that there be no lumps in it. Here, there is some distinction in the early modern English with reference to comparison to the modern, our today's times English. Look at the structure, that there be no lumps in it. Put it all together and season it according to your taste. Again, sometimes spellings are different. For example, the spellings of taste. Well, while the chilies are steaming gently, this is the third recipe, by the way. You have come to the third recipe. Remember, this is the recipe of some mozzarella with chilies. So while the chilies are steaming, gently rip up your mozzarella into 4 or 5 pieces and randomly place on a large plate. Peel and de-seed the chilies and slice lengthways as thinly as you like. It's quite important to scatter them evenly over the mozzarella. And so, the recipe continues. Very important to wash your hands after doing so before you rub your eyes or anything else. Now rip up some purple and green basil over the top and sprinkle with sea salt and freshly ground black pepper and a little squeeze of lemon juice and a generous lug of olive oil. Nice one. So, this third recipe that is from the modern times, you would have found, I read it with a lot of ease. I am sure you would also not have come across any word that you do not understand. The the language change that has taken place, in terms of spellings. These are all the spellings that we use today. The structures are also, different from the structures that are used in the early two recipes. Well, my dear students, let us now from the linguistic and the, sociolinguistic perspectives compare and contrast these recipes. There are certain similarities in text 1 and text 3. That is the the middle English period and the current English, today's English. Since the texts are all from the same genre, that is the cooking genre, we might expect to see some general similarities in the kind of language that is used. So, for example, the names of certain edibles or some utensils, they are the same. Many of the clauses in the texts have the form of imperatives. For example, peel and de-seed the chilies. Imperative language is used because recipes deal with giving instructions that are to be followed to cook that recipe. Because the function of the text, whether it is the first text that is from the early middle periods or the last text that is from today's times, the purpose is to direct the reader in a certain course of action, that is to cook or to prepare food. There are certain other similarities as well. In the second and third text, there is a distinctive use of second person possessive pronoun your. In mingle with your cream, text 2, and gently rip up your mozzarella in text 3. So, this kind of structure is similar. In instructional discourse, there seems to be a variant to make general definiteness rather than specific possessions, in that it seems to have the same meaning as, for example, the words that are used, if you look at the screen, rather than, say, contrasting with other possessive determiners like his or my. So, these are the similarities that we find in all the three texts, and particularly they become prominent in text 1 and text 3 because they are the most distant texts. Text 2 comes somewhere in the timeline between these two texts. Well, when it comes to differences from 1 to 3 texts, when we look at all the three texts, there are certain differences. For example, orthographic changes have occurred. The shape of letters have changed. For example, this sign that I earlier said at the outset that probably we don't know what it is. Actually, this is known as a thorn from the runic alphabet, and this is no longer used in English language. That is why it seemed so unfamiliar to us. It is now replaced with th in this. So this particular letter, this particular word, is a Middle English spelling of seeth. Morphological change has occurred, over the times in English. The third person plural object pronoun him has been replaced by them. This sound and this spelling has changed. The pronoun forms are the result of long-term contact in northern England between English and Old Norse in the Middle English period times. So, the sociolinguistic conditions living in those Norse English times, Middle English times, there has been certain influences on the English language. As far as semantic and syntactic changes are concerned, over these three texts, over the times, changes have occurred. For example, the verb seeth in Middle English could be used transitively since it can take a direct object. For example, this is how it was used, seeth them. This is hem is them. Whereas today, literally you would write it, by the way, like this. But, the use syntactically as a transitive form, there is a shift now in that. In modern times, the meaning of words have also changed. For example, boil, to be angry. And this has had consequence for its syntactic behavior as well. It is not only used intransitively and usually collocates with the prepositional phrases with rage, for example, and then there are lexical changes as well. Words have changed as well. New words have entered into the language. For example, word mozzarella, for example, word chili, they have entered into the language that did not exist in the Middle English times, for instance. So when it comes to further differences, stylistic and textual changes have also occurred. The first text, that was the Middle English text, it consisted solely of imperative clauses functioning as directives, thus giving directions to the reader to follow to cook the meals. And the impression created for a modern reader is of an impersonal, purely instructive text. Personalization is not done in that text. Whereas the most modern text that is taken from the modern times is the final text. It has a mixture of clause types. For example, it includes declaratives. It has declarative clauses, beginning with them. It's quite important. And then there are certain processes in the structures that are used to kind of create personalization for the reader. The function of the clause is still a directive, but the grammatical form in the modern text is quite different. So, language change has occurred in English. This is what we have seen through these three examples. It has taken place on the morphological, phonological, graphological, syntactic, and semantic levels. Change is inevitable, and this is how it happens in all the languages, and it has not taken place purely on the linguistic basis. Certain socio-cultural factors around have played their role in this regard. So, what are those factors that play a role? Change in the structure of a particular variety materializes when the linguistic system employed by speakers for communicative purposes in a particular situation changes. So, depending upon the demands of the use of the language, it goes through changes. Language change is a phenomenon that is a permanent alteration. This is made in the features of the language over the times. It's not that next day you would go back to the same thing. All natural languages change, and language change affects different areas of language use. Now, opposite to this idea of change is the idea of language maintenance, that denotes the continuing use of language in the face of competition of other languages and in the face of competition of change through the social processes. It refers to when the members of a community attempt to keep the language and they do not give it away with the passage of time.